FM News Talk 97.1.
On-demand audio.
Our regular Monday guest, he's been on basically with us nonstop because of everything that's been happening in the Middle East. Stephen Yates is a foreign policy expert with DC International Advisory, dciadvisory.org. Also former advisor to former Vice President Dick Cheney. Stephen, good afternoon to you.
Hi, Dana.
There's still so many developments going on with the crumbling policy in the Middle East, and despite the media's intent to redirect focus and try to somehow, they came out with this political hit piece on Romney. This what is happening in the Middle East is still happening. The State Department had they said that they're done discussing this matter. They told reporters on Friday afternoon that they're not going to answer any more questions about the attacks in Benghazi because they have an ongoing investigation. But that seems incredibly convenient since, they were responsible for making sure that this didn't happen in the first place on 9/11. It seems like they owe their constituency answers to these questions regardless. I mean, is that just a cop-out from them?
It is definitely a cop-out. Now, I am sure that there are elements of the events over there that they aren't supposed to talk about while they remain under investigation, but it's well within our rights as citizens, and it's well within Congress's rights or the media's rights, the press, for answers about what in the world is your policy. What steps have you taken to try to shape developments in this region? And obviously, things have not moved in the direction that President Obama predicted. He famously in 2007 suggested because he had several Muslim relatives and he had lived in a majority Muslim country that somehow the world would receive him differently. Well, we're 3+ years in, and these are the fruits that have borne, and they certainly ought to be facing those questions. But just to say no more questions on the hottest, most volatile issue before us today is a complete cop-out.
Right. Is this, some have said that one of the reasons, or that the big reason perhaps, that the attacks on our consulate in Benghazi went so far is because of the ever-changing rules of engagement, that they were prohibited from providing security at some of these, diplomatic installations in Libya. How much did that play into it? Did that play into this? Political correctness?
I'm not terribly familiar with all of the procedures for what they would have done in Libya in particular, partly because it's an unusual post. I mean, obviously, it's a place that had been in war. You would have a somewhat different approach to maintaining security in that environment, I would hope. But we're going to have probably months and months of inquiries where we're going to hopefully get some answers. But the bottom line really comes back to the fact that the administration wasted several days on either silence and then an outright lie that this was provoked by a video, as opposed to getting at the heart of, really, we have large-scale evidence that a violent ideology has declared war on us, and that there's nothing Obama has done that can undeclare that.
Right. And going along with this, the headline from Reuters, Sudan rejected our request to send, finally they're going to send Marines in, I guess, to guard some of these consulates and embassies. But Sudan rejected our request to send a platoon in to fortify the security outside of our embassy there. I didn't realize, Stephen, that we had to seek permission from these countries to be able to protect our own sovereign soil, our embassies inside their countries. Is that something new?
No, it's part of the Vienna Conventions, but I'm very simple-minded about this. Conventions are all nice and tidy for the people who play by the rules and want to get along. It's specifically for the exceptions in the world that actually don't want to play by the rules, are a risk. We just have to use some common sense. I would say at the very least, if a country says, no, don't come in, I'd say, okay, fine. You don't receive any American aid until we are assured our security challenges are met. And I would probably want to hint that, well, if you can't ensure security and you want to allow us to do it, maybe the safest thing to do is to remove our people.
Exactly. And especially when the Sudanese foreign minister had said that, well, no, we have our own security. We'll protect your diplomatic corps. They're fine here. But that's kind of what Libya had said. And they ended up being the ones who gave our ambassador over to the protesters. And, the rest is history. I don't know that I trust them.
Yeah, well, so the old adage about trusting and verifying and things like that, and if you want something done right, you probably better do it yourself.
Right.
All of those household idioms really apply, even in these complicated situations. Now, the situation in Libya is a little bit more complicated to me than the one in, say, Egypt and some of these other places, where you have these Islamist leaders completely unrepentant, and basically telling us that these protests will go on, and there's something somehow wrong with us, and we are immense donors to them. At least in Libya, as horrible as that situation has been and has become, we at least have some people with the sense to come out quickly and say, whoa, 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 no, this is terrible, and actually tell the truth up against Ambassador Susan Rice. No, this was something that was planned. These are people from outside our country, and we need help.
And yes, and going along with it, how embarrassing is it that we have our UN ambassador who I guess, and I have a side question that kind of goes along with that, but first, how embarrassing is it that she's contradicted publicly by Libya's own intelligence and their own leadership, their own president, their own prime? They contradict what we're saying. It's almost as if the Obama administration are the only people anymore who are saying that it's still about a film and that it was spontaneous.
Right. Well, I wish that it was an isolated event, but it's a pathology that goes across the region. I mean, specifically on the Libya situation, you have to believe that a fragile government coming out of war doesn't really want to pick a fight with the United States over this kind of stuff. But heaven forbid, I mean, they're the ones that face the existential threat on their territory. I mean, they can't afford to let the lie go on. But they're not the only actor in the world that the administration says one thing and they have to be contradicted by another. When you have Prime Minister Netanyahu having to say, whoa, wait a minute. No, we don't actually have good relations. We don't actually have a calm and peaceful trajectory with Iran. Unfortunately, this administration has a pattern of basically saying what they want to believe, almost like a Leninist, hoping that makes it so.
Right. And when you hear these reports of protesters in Egypt getting paid, they were confessing to being paid to go and protest in front of our embassy. That kind of goes against all of these being spontaneous as well.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's basic. It's dangerous naivete to think that it's spontaneous. In a less serious moment, you might say, well, this is just part of the Occupy mentality and movement. I mean, you get these paid people to go out and do the dirty work while people sit back and play politics. But the situation in Egypt, I think, is exceedingly volatile. And as we've seen over the last week, this is not geographically contained. It can spread to a lot of places. It's going to affect the price of gas at the pump. It's going to affect a lot of industries that depend on any kind of activity in majority Muslim countries. And so I think it's really way past time to start taking this more seriously. One speech by Obama doesn't declare it over.
The insistence by this administration to constantly focus on this film and these filmmakers, there were the reports of and the photos and video of this guy being led. He had a scarf around his face to hide his identity, but the media ended up blowing that up because they went outside his house, broadcasted. They've been broadcasting family photos of him. Is it to the point now where this administration, kind of going along with this media, is now they're allowing outside interests to dictate their foreign policy, and they're also, I feel as though they're endangering the lives of other Americans because they're insisting that our free speech is offensive to our enemies abroad. What do you make of this very dangerous scenario that I see kind of playing out here?
I think it's extremely dangerous and extremely immoral. There is no way any responsible person, really in almost any culture on earth, can say that the expression of an idea is equivalent to justifying mass murder. And that's exactly what this political movement is about. It's about cleansing a broad region, if not the earth, of people who don't share their beliefs. They're trying to purge the people who are actually within their own religion, but who oppose them. And so, to me, it's exceedingly dangerous. It also basically sort of says, we have no plan, we have no means, and so the only thing we can say is sort of akin to what people used to blame rapists of bringing attacks on themselves. You have to talk softly. Don't dare provoke this monster because it'll be your fault that you brought this on.
Right.
It's just so wrong on so many levels, and unfortunately, it involves millions, if not billions, of people enormous amounts of resources, and it's likely to come to our shores if we don't get our hands on it over there.
Absolutely. Gosh. And if we could just hold on for 50 more days, Stephen, 50 more days, maybe we'll, I'm telling you.
The only reassuring thought is that Susan Rice's exceedingly odd performance over the weekend perhaps will make people think that she couldn't be confirmed Secretary of State if Obama was elected. I just can't imagine having that reel go over and over and over and have this person be taken seriously.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. Stephen Yates, D.C. International Advisory, DCIadvisory.org. Stephen, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
And take care.